presenter for today is Samira Rahman. Samira is a software engineer at Booz Allen Hamilton, where she works with the CDC. She holds a bachelor's degree in computational medicine with a minor in computer science, and is currently pursuing her master's in health data science at Dartmouth College. Samira first encountered the Hizmet community during her college years through a close friend who introduced her to Hocaefendi's books and mission. She is now an active member of Youth Academy Young Professionals and is a mentor in English Deciding the Class. So please join me in welcoming Samira Rahman to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Samira Rahman, and thank you Rana for this beautiful introduction. So today I would like to start by sharing a little bit about myself and how I came to be here. So I moved from Bangladesh in 2016 with my family, and later I went to college and met my dear friend Shule, who introduced me to this Hizmet movement. She always talked about the lighthouses, how they would the girls would stay together, learn about Islam, and that was really surprising to me. I have never heard of a group of women staying and learning about our deen in such an amazing way. So after graduation, she invited me to the weekly halakas at Atfa, and from there I also started volunteering with Embrace Relief, taking English Risale classes, going to retreats, and also from Shule I was introduced to Hocaefendi and his books. After reading those books, I got to understand how service is not something optional for our daily day-to-day life, but it's something central to our faith. So today and you can see some pictures here of the volunteering works and the interfaith iftars, visiting Peace Island in New Jersey, Shule and my photo from when we were in college. So today I'm going to be introducing section 1 and 2 of our study, where I'll be discussing Hocaefendi's leadership in building peace continuously and the consistency in his messages and actions. So Hocaefendi's lifelong leadership. This slide introduces his overall vision, how his leadership was rooted in peace, dialogue, and education. He began as a young imam in Erzurum, later moved to Izmir, and his gradually inspired a local movement called Hizmet, what we all I'm sure know the meaning is service. So let's dive into his philosophy of peace. In a 1979 article, The Society of Peace, Hocaefendi described that peace is not just the absence of conflict. It's something much deeper. Hocaefendi explained that true peace is having a trusting community that transforms every aspect of our lives, in our homes, workplaces, schools, and so on. He said we must direct all our efforts toward building a community of peace. All of the actions that I see Hizmet and Atfa doing nowadays is basically following Hocaefendi's footsteps. And this vision reminds me that peace isn't something that is just an idea. It's something we practice in how we speak, listen, and treat people around us. And peace through education was central to Hocaefendi's mission. For him, education was the most powerful path to building peace. He once said, education gives the opportunity that people with different religion, language, cultures, and nations can live in peace with each other. He inspired many schools around the world to combine science, ethics, and service with faith. And Fatima will talk about these institutions and these schools in the later sections in more detail, so I won't dive into those for now. So for me personally, Hocaefendi's message hurts very deeply because as someone in technology and healthcare field, I get to see how education and the understanding of people around me can truly build a path towards peace. Hocaefendi's responsibility of tolerance, dialogue, and humanitarianism. Hocaefendi believes that tolerance isn't optional but a responsibility. He used the Turkish word hoşgörü to describe tolerance. But more broadly, it means accepting differences in people, but working together through dialogue to find a common ground. He often said that our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the perfect model of mercy and understanding. So tolerance for Hocaefendi was not a modern idea, it was a religious duty. What moved me most was that he didn't just speak or write about tolerance. He practiced this through interfaith dialogue. In 1998, he met Pope John Paul II in Vatican. This was a very symbolic and courageous event during a time when Taipei was very polarized, and this gesture shocked many people around him. He also met the Orthodox patriarch, Jewish rabbi, and many other world religion leaders. Those meetings were full of warmth, mutual respect, and shared longing for peace. And people who attended these meetings with Hocaefendi said that Hocaefendi would always find something common when he was meeting someone from different cultures and build upon the conversation from that. So you can see how that would soften people's hearts, and they could really see that Muslims are so much more than what the Western media portrays us as. And in a day where we live in such a polarized society, it makes me question, how can I do more in interfaith dialogue? And I have been lucky enough to be invited in many interfaith iftars and fountain talks where I brought my Muslim or non-Muslim friends who were so surprised to see how involved our Muslim community is and how engaging they are and the work they're doing with the community. And funny, one of my non-Muslim friends, I was talking to her about the details about things I'm learning in my weekly Sahabats, and she's like, Samira, why haven't you invited me yet? I'm like, of course I'll invite you, you should come. So I believe that through these types of events, non-Muslims will get to know that we're just regular people like everyone else. So Hocaefendi also talked about how service to humanity is service to God as his humanitarian vision. One of his most beautiful teaching was that collective salvation. He wrote that plans for individual salvation is just an illusion. So what he really meant was that no one can truly succeed without everyone around them succeeding. So through tolerance, dialogue, and mercy, Hocaefendi reminded the world that peace begins when we see every person around us as a shared humanity. In this slide, we will see how Hocaefendi remained steadfast through changes and his actions in continuity. For Hocaefendi, continuity meant embodying peace even when the world gave every reason not to. So, for example, his earliest sermons, starting in 1960s to his final years in exile in America, his message stayed the same. It was always rooted in nonviolence, service-oriented, and in faith. Neither exile, illness, or political persecution changed that course. Even when he was accused of any conspiracies that he never did, he did not call for any protest or revenge. Instead of responding in anger, he used his time in seclusion to strengthen individual relationships and later open up to the broader community around him. Also, during this time, he still sustained dialogue with Muslims and non-Muslims. He attended many community iftars, visited university, and gave sermons and lectures. Hocaefendi's idea of peace included social justice through gender equality and gender equity. He said a society cannot be peaceful without half of it being without half of it left out. That's why he also supported women's participation in every sector of life by saying, there is no difference between women and men. They're equal in freedom of religion, expression, and finance. He saw that empowering women was essential to social peace. And I got to witness firsthand a lot of women leadership through ATFA and Youth Academy, with Lindsay Abla, Julia Abla, and all the girls who do so much to organize events such as today's event and many other events I have been to. So this has been really inspiring for me, seeing how all the women come together to build a community. And all the Ablas who make food for all these events. So Hocaefendi's personal ethics of forgiveness. Hocaefendi practiced forgiveness as the highest form of peace. In his writings, he said, return their bad actions with goodness. Repaying evil with evil implies a deficiency in character. The opposite is nobility. So even after being accused and attacked, Hocaefendi responded with calmness, never hatred. That refusal to mirror hostility was in itself peace building, which we also call moral jihad, a fight against the nafs. So consistency in Hocaefendi's messages. There was a lot of examples I got to see through his readings and his writings. So I will just discuss a few of them here today. So Hocaefendi's core messages never changed despite the time, place, or the pressure he was under. He always emphasized education, dialogue, and service as the core. His teachings were rooted in the Quran and the Hadith, and his message was always same because Quran and Hadiths are non-changing. His spiritual intelligence and moral restraint. Hocaefendi described true intelligence as letting go of trouble and focusing on what is important, not to focus on anything not important that's happening around us, but to stay steadfast in our goal and mission. He defined a true Muslim as one from whose tongue and hand others are saved. So restraint, compassion, and self-control are not optional virtues. They are a sign of spiritual intelligence. Hocaefendi also condemned violence in all forms throughout his life. For example, after the 9/11 attack, he issued one of the first condemnations as a Muslim leader. He said that no terrorist can be a Muslim and no true Muslim is a terrorist. He also added in the Wall Street Journal that Muslims must combat the extremist cancer. This allowed a lot of Muslims to react appropriately after this violent event and call it what it was, a violent act towards humanity. And after the 2016 coup in Turkey, Hocaefendi was also falsely accused, even though he was not involved. And he immediately stated in the New York Times that government should be won through a process of free and fair election, not force. He always talked about law, restraint, and patience as the intelligent path to peace. To me, this kind of consistency shows real sincerity. Now let's talk about how he embodied what he preached. So consistency in his actions. So Hocaefendi practiced what we call temsil or model living. He believed that people learn more from what you do instead of what you say. So even when he moved to the US, he lived a very simple life in Pennsylvania. His home was modest, and he stayed away from any luxury, just focusing on prayers, readings, and community building. And I had the pleasure of visiting the Chestnut Street Center, where I got to see Hocaefendi's room, as you can see in this slide. It was very simple for someone who is such a big global scholar, recognized throughout the world. This was very surprising for me how simply he used to live. And also after talking to some Ablas and Abis who visited Hocaefendi when he was alive, they mentioned seeing him fixing things around the house, around his residence, cutting grass, making food for the guests, and even showing up when he was sick. And you can see some examples here on the slide where he was cutting grass, making foods. So this really shows that who he was as a human being and his character. Next, charity and education as a proof of his constant actions. We know he wrote so many books, but he gave away most of the royalties he received from these books for education and scholarships and other humanitarian aids without keeping anything for himself. So his global example, the consistency in his actions is spread globally. Teachers, volunteers, educators were inspired by him. They saw the way he lived his life, and they wanted to mirror it how in their own lives. And again, this is something Mariam and Fatima will discuss deeply in their sections. So because of Hocaefendi's lifelong leadership, he was recognized globally. There were many awards that he was presented with. For example, the UNESCO Romania Award in 2005. He was also named one of the 100 most influential leaders in 2013 in the Time magazine. And he was awarded the Gandhi King Ikeda Peace Award in 2015 and so many more. But even with all these honors, he continued to live modestly and have a consistent life. So lastly, my personal takeaways. As I studied Hocaefendi's leadership and his life, what inspired me most wasn't what he taught, but how he lived. Whether in Turkey or America, his words never changed. They always stayed consistent. It taught me that leadership doesn't have to be loud. It can be quiet, steady, one step at a time. I learned that we can all be leaders in our own small ways, in our workplaces, homes, and in our communities. And peace isn't something we wait for. It's something we go and do ourselves. And lastly, I want to leave you all with this hadith from our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that Hocaefendi always told people around him, that the best deeds are those done regularly, even if they're few. Thank you everyone for being here today and listening to me.
Samira, for your wonderful presentation. Now to hear some thoughts from Dr. Yunus about this presentation with you.
Oh, I think Samira did an amazing job. I think everybody would agree, right? So everybody was so nervous. So it wasn't easy. I mean, again, this was like very limited amount of time. I think we started in August, and again, leadership, I understand everybody thinks it's an easy subject, but it really isn't. Especially when it comes to leadership. I love what Samira said, right? It's quiet leadership. So we had to find those pieces of information that we can make it loud for you. So it was really not an easy start, but thank you so much. I mean, it was an amazing work. I think, Samira and I think part of the team really appreciated her presence. I think you did a phenomenal job as well. Thank you.